Okay, today we're going to talk about a place that is rapidly shifting from just a giant frozen island into one of the most critical geopolitical hotspots on the entire planet. It's a place you think you know, but I'm betting you probably don't. We are talking about Greenland. No, seriously, take a second. When you hear the word Greenland, what's the very first thing that pops into your head? Because for most of us, it's a pretty specific image. Yeah, I bet for a lot of you, it's something like this, right? A huge, empty landscape of white, frozen, super remote, and let's be honest, maybe a little bit irrelevant? Or hey, maybe your brain went somewhere else. Maybe you're thinking, wait, isn't that part of North America? Maybe even another US state? That's actually another really common misconception we're going to clear up right now. The truth is, the reality is way, way more complex, and frankly, a lot more important for the entire world. To get why, we need to break down what's really going on up there in the Arctic. And this explainer is brought to you by webfitnews.co.nz, where we break down complex global issues in simple terms. All right, so to really understand why this place matters so much all of a sudden, we've got to get the absolute basics right first. Let's just clear up exactly what Greenland is and what it isn't. Okay, first things first. Greenland is the world's largest island. That's right, the biggest one there is. It's not a continent, and despite its massive size, it has a teeny tiny population of about 56,000 people, most of whom are Inuit Greenlanders. And critically, it is not an independent country. Well, not yet anyway. So if it's not a country, what is it? Well, it's what's called an autonomous territory, and it's part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Now, what on earth does that actually mean? It's basically a special status that gives Greenland a whole lot of power to run its own show. And this chart breaks down that power split perfectly. You see, Greenland has its own parliament, its own government, it handles most of its own internal business. But Denmark, the larger state, hangs on to the really big ticket items: foreign policy, military defense, and the ultimate say on sovereignty. It's a partnership, for sure, but a very complicated one. So for decades, this whole arrangement was pretty quiet, you know? It worked. But recently, something massive has shifted. A change so big, we're calling it the Great Arctic Pivot, and it has shoved Greenland right into the center of global attention. I mean, just think about it for a second. For centuries, Greenland was pretty much locked in ice. It was incredibly difficult to get to, insanely expensive to do anything there. Shipping routes were blocked, mining was a non-starter, and its strategic value was, well, limited. That whole era is over. So what happened? What flipped the switch? Well, the really crucial thing to understand is that it wasn't just one thing. It was a perfect storm of three huge factors, all converging at the exact same moment. You've got climate change, which is physically changing the island. You've got modern technology, especially military tech, that has brand new needs. And finally, we figured out that Greenland is sitting on an absolute treasure trove of critical resources. Let's dig into that. First, the melting ice is literally opening up brand new shipping lanes across the Arctic and exposing land that's been covered for thousands of years. Second, today's advanced military systems like missile defense and radar absolutely need a strategic foothold in the Arctic. And third, under all that melting ice, we're finding massive reserves of rare earth minerals, the stuff that's essential for everything from electric cars and AI to the most advanced military hardware. So you put all that together and bam, Greenland goes from being a frozen afterthought to a strategic grand prize. And one country in particular has made its interest very, very clear: the United States. Oh yeah, you probably remember this. When Donald Trump floated the idea of buying Greenland, a lot of people just laughed it off. It sounded absurd, right? But it wasn't just some crazy, fleeting idea. It was a very public signal of a much, much deeper strategic interest that had been brewing for a while. Now, here's what's really fascinating. The U.S. thinking on this has changed. This isn't about planting a flag and just owning more land anymore. That's old school thinking. It is all about securing a critical military position on the globe. Why that spot? Because of top secret projects like the so-called Golden Dome. This is a next-generation missile defense shield. And for a system like that to actually work, it needs early warning radars placed in the Arctic to detect threats. And if you look at a map, there is simply no better place for that than Greenland. It's the new front line. But there is one giant problem for anyone in the US with these ambitions. Greenland is not for sale, not even close. Denmark has firmly and repeatedly rejected any talk of transferring sovereignty. Greenland's own government has rejected it too, as they're pushing for their own independence. And maybe most importantly, public support for the idea among the actual people of Greenland is almost zero. And this is where things get really tense on the world stage. Remember, Denmark is a founding member of NATO. So for the US, the leader of NATO, to be putting this kind of pressure on an ally's territory, well, that seriously challenges the rules of the alliance. It sets a really dangerous precedent that you can bet other world powers like Russia and China are watching very, very closely. So that brings us to the big question, right? Where does all of this go from here? And maybe more importantly, why should you, wherever you are in the world, care about what happens to this remote island? Because what happens in Greenland isn't just about Greenland. It's really a preview of our collective future. This is about who controls the energy supply chains of tomorrow. It's about the stability of global security. It's about whether international laws can actually hold up under new kinds of pressure. It's a real-time, live-action example of how climate change is literally redrawing the map of global power. Look, nobody has a crystal ball. There are a few different ways this could unfold. We could see an increased U.S. military presence, but one that's negotiated carefully with Denmark. Or we could see Greenland's push for more autonomy or even full independence succeed. This could all lead to way more competition in the Arctic, or it could force nations to create stronger international rules to manage it all. The only thing we know for sure is that there is no going back. You know, there's a quote that just perfectly captures this entire shift. Greenland was once ignored because it was frozen. Now it is watched because it is exposed. The very ice that made it remote and forgettable is disappearing. And its disappearance has exposed not just land and minerals, but a brand new fault line running through global politics. So, as we wrap this up, the whole conversation has changed. It's not a question of why Greenland matters anymore. We know why. The real question, the challenge for all of us, is how the world is going to handle its newfound importance. The choices made about this huge island in the next few years are going to tell us an awful lot about the kind of world we're all